Hey everyone, perfect timing for this deep dive, don't you think?
Ah,
It's World Mental Health Day, NDD. We're tackling a topic some of you specifically requested, workplace mental health,
yeah, it's something that's, well, definitely top of mind for a lot of people these days.
for sure. And I bet that presentation you're working on is going to be super relevant.
Yeah,
But before we jump into the thick of it, I think it's important to acknowledge that this isn't just about feeling a little stressed now and then. It's a big deal.
absolutely.
The World Health Organization actually found that millions of workdays get lost every year because of mental health struggles.
It's huge. That's just like, it's mind-boggling when you think about the sheer
Yeah.
scale of it. And it really underscores the impact this has, not just on individuals, but on businesses too.
It's true. I mean, we see it all the time, right? Like decreased productivity, people burning out, higher turnover rates, all of that jazz.
It's like this domino effect. Nobody wants to deal with it.
Exactly. And it's something a lot of people are grappling with in different ways.
Yeah.
We actually got some really insightful stories from you guys, and we love to bring the human element into this. So
Always.
we've got John, he's a tech developer, Emma, a healthcare worker, and David, who works in marketing, each one dealing with this in their own way.
Each story is so different, but they all kind of highlight the same core issues.
Totally. So where do you want to start?
Well, John's experience with burnout in the tech world is as good a place as any, I think.
Yeah, such a classic example of that always on, high pressure environment.
Right. Long hours, constant deadlines, this pressure to be constantly available.
It's like the expectation is you're always plugged in.
Exactly. And that's a recipe for disaster if you don't figure out how to set some boundaries.
And his story wasn't just about taking a vacation or anything either, right?
Yeah.
It was about fundamentally changing how he approached that whole work-life balance thing,
Yeah, it's not just about time off, it's about mental space too.
which, let's be real, is easier said than done. Okay, so we've got the tech world covered. What about Emma in healthcare? Talk about a field where burnout is practically an epidemic.
It really is. And Emma's experience with compassion fatigue is something a lot of people in helping professions, especially in healthcare, can relate to
Yeah, you're constantly giving, constantly putting others first.
until there's nothing left.
And I remember you were particularly interested in the support systems, or lack thereof, for healthcare workers, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like they're the caregivers, but who cares for them? It's something that needs way more attention.
For sure. I mean, they're dealing with really heavy stuff day in and day out.
And Emma's hospital actually did something really interesting. They introduced things like peer support groups, mental health days, just recognizing that even the strongest individuals need a safety net sometimes.
That's amazing
Yeah,
because it normalizes the need for support.
exactly.
It's okay to not be okay. And speaking of different ways this whole mental health thing can manifest, David's story about panic attacks in marketing, talk about unexpected.
Right. And it just goes to show you that these struggles, they don't always fit neatly into a box.
Hmm.
We don't all wear our anxieties on our sleeves.
So true. It's like
Definitely.
we often put on this brave face, especially at work.
Absolutely. And sometimes those anxieties manifest in physical ways that we don't always expect, like panic attacks. Who would thought?
And in David's case, it was triggered by a marketing meeting of all things. Just shows you how much pressure we're all under, even in seemingly ordinary situations.
Hmm.
But thankfully, he had a really supportive manager, right? Someone who recognized the signs and was able to step in.
Yeah, that's crucial. Having someone in your corner who gets it, who can offer support, makes all the difference.
It really does. It's like having that safety net within the workplace.
Hmm.
Managers are often the first line of defense in these situations, but it
Yeah,
makes you wonder if managers are getting enough training on this stuff.
totally. Because most of them, they aren't therapists, right?
Exactly. And that's where having clear company policies around mental health can really make a difference.
Huge difference because it can't just be lip service, like, oh yeah, we care about our
It's
employees.
got to be backed up with concrete action.
100%.
Like those mental health days that Emma's hospital put in place,
Exactly.
that
Oh.
speaks volumes. It's like they're saying, look, we get it. This stuff, it's real. Take care of yourself. No judgment.
It's about creating that culture of support, that safety net that lets people know it's okay to not be okay.
Totally. And it's not just on the company either, right?
Yeah.
Like employees have to feel empowered to advocate for themselves and each other.
Absolutely. Speaking up, having those conversations, that's huge. And it kind of ties into something we were talking about earlier about fostering open conversations around mental health in the workplace.
Yeah, that really resonated with you, didn't it?
It did, because I think it's so, so important Just creating a workplace where we feel as comfortable talking about mental health as we would a physical ailment.
Totally, but that's a big shift for a lot of people, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually break down those barriers and get people talking about this stuff openly?
Well, I think leadership plays a big role in setting the tone.
For sure.
Like, if managers are open about their own struggles, even in small ways, it gives other people permission to do the same.
And it normalizes it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not this taboo topic anymore.
Exactly. And it can't just be a one-time thing either. It's got to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, like building it into the company culture
Exactly. Whether it's through team check-ins or just being more mindful of how we're communicating with each other.
and celebrating those mental health wins too, right?
Yeah.
Big or small.
Oh, absolutely. Recognizing that we're all on a journey with this stuff.
Love that. It's
Yeah.
like a collective effort. Everyone's
Yeah.
supporting each other.
Exactly.
You know, you had a whole section on resources in your presentation, and I think that's something we should definitely touch on before we wrap up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it's great to talk about all of this, but at the end of the day, people need actual tangible support too.
100%. Talking about it is important, but it's not enough. People need access to resources, things like counseling services, employee assistance programs.
Or even just like a list of helpful websites or books or whatever.
Exactly, just something to point people in the right direction.
Because if you give an employee a therapist, you know,
You equip them with the tools to navigate life's challenges both in and out of the workplace.
boom, that's the stuff. And, you know, it makes me think all of this stuff we're talking about, this goes way beyond the workplace, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like if we're spending the majority of our waking hours at work, shouldn't the lessons we're learning about mental well-being there apply to every other aspect of our lives too?
That's such a good point. It's all connected, isn't it?
Right. So if we can figure out how to create mentally healthy workplaces, could that actually be the key to creating a healthier, happier society overall?
I think so. I mean, think about it. Work is where we get a lot of our social interaction, our sense of purpose, our identity, even.
That's how we contribute to the world.
Exactly. And if that space is a constant source of stress and anxiety, it's going to bleed into every other area of our lives. But on the flip side, if work can be a place that supports our mental well-being.
It could have this ripple effect of positivity.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is by applying these principles of open communication,
Hmm.
setting healthy boundaries, providing support, not just in the workplace, but in our families, our communities, we can actually start to shift the culture on a much larger scale.
I think so. And it starts with recognizing that mental well-being is everyone's responsibility.
It's wild, right? Like, who knew we'd be talking about changing the world through workplace wellness?
Right. But it makes sense when you really think about it.
It does. It totally
Yeah.
does. But we've thrown a lot of info at everyone today, and I know you're big on taking action. So for anyone listening who's feeling inspired, what's one small step they can take today?
Honestly, just start a conversation. It can be as simple as checking in on a colleague. Hey, how are you really doing?
Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes.
Exactly. Or even just suggesting that your workplace look into some of the resources we talked about today.
Planting those seeds, right?
Exactly. And for anyone listening who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed themselves right now, please remember that taking care of your own mental health, that's priority number one.
Always. You can't pour from an empty cup, they say.
Mhm.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Totally agree.
Really got us thinking about the bigger picture here. Who knew that focusing on mental health in the workplace could potentially be the key to a happier, healthier world overall?
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.